Hey everybody, it's good to be back, and good to be watching The Walking Dead again. I didn't do a whole lot of watching over the summer. I caught up with the third season during the AMC's marathon that was just on before this newest episode, and man, it was a good day watching it all day. Let me start off by saying that after watching almost the whole third season today, the two things that I want from this fourth season the most are, first, less soundtrack music. Not less score. I love the score. Bear McCreary's music is one of the best, some of the best that's composed for television. But less soundtrack music. And I know they deliberately did that to fill up a soundtrack, but I hope it's a lot less this year. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, I want the show to feel like more of a horror show, like the first two seasons. I mean, more so the first, but the second was still much better with the horror than the third was. The third really felt like a drama series, and don't get me wrong, it's still pretty good, but it just didn't have that horror element. And I'm really hoping that the fourth season picks that up again. As far as whether or not the show hit those 2 points, I did notice the soundtrack music, particularly at the beginning when Rick was listening to his headphones, which was strange. But I understand that he has headphones now. But as far as the horror, I'm not quite sure it's there yet. It seems like they're building up to it pretty quick, and the crazy lady in the woods was a decent sign of horror to come, I guess you could say. So we'll see. Alright, now where to begin? There's a lot of content to talk about, but I don't feel the necessity to talk about it all in detail because this episode was a lot of setting up for the preceding season. Alright, well, it's safe to say that life has gone on pretty well at the prison for about 6 or 7 months. That's according to the producer that was on The Talking Dead. They've built a farm, they have a much better gate, they have far more people that are trained with dealing with the walkers. They have a council, like a sort of a system of government, and they have different people assigned to lead different organizations and groups, and it's all working pretty well. And then there's also the relationship statuses. We don't really know if Rick and Michonne are anything, as a lot of people were guessing by the end of the third season. It didn't really seem like it, but they did give a small hint. There was Beth and her boyfriend, whose name I already don't remember, but it doesn't really matter, because he's already dead. Which, by the way, I thought for sure that was going to be a Carl's upset with Beth kind of thing, but apparently not. Apparently it didn't matter at all. Glenn and Maggie are still together, which isn't a surprise. Now, strangely, both me and my fiancé watching the show with me thought that Maggie might be pregnant. I'm not sure how the show hinted that to us, but it had. So I don't know if anybody else hearing this also thought that, but we learned that she isn't pregnant towards the end of the episode. Which was a strange but predictable moment when Glenn was delighted that she wasn't pregnant, and while Maggie wasn't upset, she did tell Glenn that she wouldn't be upset if she were, because she's, quote, not afraid of living, or doesn't want to be afraid of living. And I agree with her to an extent, and I do think it was a little selfish of Glenn to say that he was, just flat out glad that she wasn't pregnant. But Maggie didn't take it that badly, so everything seems fine there for now. Alright, so then we have Tyrese and Karen, which in my opinion is kind of who cares, because if I had to guess, I would say that Karen is going to be dead next episode. And lastly, and most importantly, Daryl and Carol. And it's not exactly sure if they're a couple. They did seem even a little more close than they had in the previous third season, and Carol certainly did call him Pookie, which should be a tell, but I'm not you can never be certain with this show. And at the same time, at the very end of the episode, something I always suspected of, I don't know if I want to say suspected of happening, or suspected of being inside of Beth, but her having feelings for Daryl is what I'm getting at. Where she, after she found out her boyfriend was dead and she had almost no reaction to it, she asked how Daryl was doing. He said, fine, whatever. Tired of losing people, and she gave him a long hug, sort of an extra long hug. Now, I'm not saying that actually meant anything, but what I am saying is that I know from the comics there's some story about somebody giving somebody else oral sex and third person being driven crazy because of it and killing somebody or hurting them or something like that. I don't know the full story, because as a reminder, I don't read the comics and have no intention of reading the comics until the show is done. Regardless of them being separate universes, I still feel like spoilers could spill over, and I don't want to take that chance. So what I'm saying is that this could be the beginning of that. Daryl and Beth get closer, Carol goes crazy, or some vice versa, who knows. Just throwing it out there, so that when, or if it does happen later, I won't have not said anything. The two biggest behavior changes that I want to talk about are Carl and Rick. Carl, who went from, being basically a miniature governor, saying you gotta kill people ahead of time or who knows what's gonna happen, seems a lot more calmed down now. To the point that at the end of the episode he was upset about Carol teaching other kids about knife fighting. Which I'm not really sure I buy, by the way. Really, Carl is upset about knives being taught? Really? He shot a kid in the face. He claimed that, you had to kill the bad guys in time so the good guys didn't die. I'm just not sure I buy that. And if he runs off and tells somebody, I'm going to be really pissed at him. As far as his father, Rick, is concerned, he's certainly become a different man. I don't want to say he's healed or been saved from his old self, the crazy self that couldn't get over Laurie's death, but he's certainly more accepting and secure in the world, to the point that he doesn't even want to take his gun with him when he goes to check the snare traps. Which also seems a little unbelievable, but that is what it is. Alright, so let's talk new characters. First with the one main character that seems like he's going to live more than one episode, because the other two are dead already. That's Bob, the alcoholic former army medic Bob. He gave off a slightly creepy vibe, but at the same time, I suppose that's unfair. We don't really know the guy. He certainly was an alcoholic of some kind. He knew that he had problems with the drink, so when he picked it up, he had a moral dilemma for a moment and put it back down. This ultimately led to a large problem, but that's neither here nor there. What I want to talk about is how relevant alcoholism really is going to be in The Walking Dead. I mean, seriously, is it really going to matter that much? Is he going to end up being crazy enough to kill people because he can't have his alcohol or something? It seems a little silly, and maybe they'll make it work and it won't be as important as I'm trying to joke about. We'll see. Secondly would be Clara, if that's actually even her name. I'm pretty sure it is, and they said it was on The Talking Dead, but I'm not sure if she actually said her name or not. She probably did. Either way, when she first came onto the screen, first I thought she was a walker, then when she looked up, I thought they were actually doing something I've fantasized about for a while. And when I say fantasized, I don't mean that kind of fantasized. I just mean that I thought about it being such a great idea for the show that eventually, one day, it could go in this direction. And I really thought for a moment that it was going to this season so early on. What I'm getting at is that I thought she was going to be a walker who had consciousness. I really thought that's what they were going to do. Between the way she looked and the way she was behaving, I could have sworn that's where they were going. Now, she ended up just being a supremely dirty woman who had lost her mind, living with her husband's zombified head and hunting meat for him, which was an interesting thing in its own right, that she is sort of what Rick would end up being, or would have ended up being, had he not regained some of his sanity. Because, I mean, really, think about it. If he never got over Laurie's death, if she kept haunting his waking moments, and then he every now and then saw Shane, and he thought about all the people he's killed, it eventually drove him to maybe trying to kill people to appease Laurie, or what have you. Who knows? He could have ended up like Clara. But instead he's not, of course, and Clara ends up killing herself so that she can join her husband in the zombified state. Now what was interesting with that exact part is that when Rick walks away, it shows that he put a bag over her head. I suppose that's to match her husband, because he obviously was a head in a bag, but I wonder if they're going to reference that later, as in Rick will see the Clara zombie and see the bag so that he knows it's her, and that'll be some sort of reminiscing moment. Although reminiscing would be a bad word, it's probably going to be worse than that. And we also learn from that moment that there are 3 specific questions that any person who comes across a new possible member has to ask in order to see if that new member is qualified. And while you guys don't need me to repeat the questions, just really quick, it's how many walkers they've killed, how many people they've killed, and why. As in, why did they kill those people? Which I think are 3 pretty damn good questions, because if they gauge any of their answers to be insincere or suspicious, they know not to bring them back to the group, and possibly even kill them on the spot so that they don't follow them or try to find their prison camp. And then the last thing we need to talk about, and also the last topic in general, is Patrick. Now, he ties into a whole bigger issue, so I saved him for last on purpose. Because you see, there's several different things that could be going on with Patrick, or were going on with Patrick, because he's now dead. I don't know if any of them are going to be right. Any of the following of what I'm about to say could end up being wrong or not true. I have no idea at this point. But here it goes. We know that Patrick started feeling unwell to the point that he was coughing and behaving as if he had a severe flu. He then drops dead from it and is even bleeding from the eyes and such already. I mean, just immediately upon his death, and then he turns into a walker. Now this is strange because I don't think the whole draining blood eyes thing happened directly because of turning into a walker. We haven't seen that before. All we've really seen is that walkers are who they are after they've died, just a zombified version of that, essentially. Now they did show that one walker near the beginning, and then also again towards the end, who had his eyes bloodied out and draining down his face as well. And I'm wondering if that was supposed to mean something, and I'll tell you what I think it was supposed to mean. But first I have to bring up the pig. The pig who was named Violet. I do say was, because it died before the episode ended. And it's very suspicious that it died. Rick was not just confused, but they made a note to show it and to have him pondering over what that could mean. Here's one thing that it could mean. That some of the meat had gone bad because there was an illness going amongst the animals. Patrick ate that soured meat, as maybe did others, and now he's died because of it. It gave him some sort of virus that obviously the prison wouldn't be able to handle, and for whatever reason it rapidly killed him in the process of one evening. Now that has a decent possibility of being true. It's actually probably the most likely true of all the hypotheses I'm about to give out, that Patrick was sick because of meat. But here's another option. I've always wondered why we don't see any zombified animals. Now, is that because the virus doesn't affect them, because the undead always eat them before they can turn into a zombie, or because it doesn't affect them at all, the virus, and they can't become a zombie? It could be any of them, but it's always been sort of commonly believed that it's the third one, that the animals can't become zombies. There's been no cases at all, and that's almost a little unbelievable that we wouldn't see any of them. So with that being the case, that got me thinking, what if that's no longer true? What if somehow one of the pigs, or whatever Patrick ate, was becoming a zombie, and it put the infection into him? Not the one they all have, but the kind that Morgan spoke of in the very first episode, the bite that burns you out and kills you, turning you into a zombie. What if that's how Patrick got sick? But that got me thinking further, because that would mean that the virus mutated, which is a common enough thing. I don't want to geek out on everybody, so I'll make this quick. If you've been following my channel, you know that I played a game called The Last of Us really recently. In case you're not into video games, I won't bore you too much, but in short, and if you haven't played the game by the way and you're still interested, spoilers, don't listen to what I'm about to say. In short, the main girl in the story has a mutated version of the infection inside her head that stops her from transforming into one of the game's zombies. What if the same is true in The Walking Dead? Now, I don't mean true as in someone's immune to the virus, although I did have that thought with Clara for a moment, but never mind that. I mean, what if the mutation affected Patrick directly? There are billions of people in the world, and infections, viruses, do mutate in order to overtake their host. the immunity system that we all have becomes compromised when a virus adapts and mutates to overtake it. That's a short, crappy explanation. Do not write that down on a test paper, but you get what I'm saying. So what if the virus inside Patrick, because we know everyone is infected, Dr. Jenner at the CDC building told us that, well, he told Rick, who told us, that everyone is infected. So what if his virus just happened to mutate, and in one evening it overtook him, killed him, burned him out, so to speak, and turned him into a walker? I am thrilled with that concept, I've got to tell you. It's already unsafe to be keeping a bunch of people simply because somebody could die. Let's just say an elderly person had a heart attack in the middle of the night, they became a walker and went on a rampage, which is sort of the same thing which can happen with Patrick, but that was already true. Now if the virus can just kill them, oh man. It makes me happy because I don't want the group to be safe. As much as I enjoy their interactions together and all that, I much prefer the zombie horror aspect, as I said at the beginning of this video. And if the virus can mutate to overtake somebody, as it may have with Patrick, then game on, everybody. Nothing is safe.